internet that's everything you imagine, and then some. Quantum Fiber, your world unleashed. Sign up today and get internet with a price for life. Keep your internet service monthly rate for as long as you keep your plan. Internet service monthly rate subject to continued plan availability.
Minnesota Vikings nugget. The Chicago Bears, who we were just speaking of, are requesting a defensive coordinator interview with Minnesota Vikings DB's coach, Durante Jones. Did you see that one, Guardsy?
I did not see that nugget.
So we're in demand, I guess. I don't know. I assume don't we have to grant it if it's a promotion?
Usually.
I think that's the way it works. So we may be losing a coach if the Bears enjoy the interview with Mr. Jones to be the Bears' next defensive coordinator. The Wild are back in action tonight against the Utah Hockey Club or team, whatever they're officially called. I don't know. Russo Radio is in the Fallness Fortress as we speak, and they tell me you can see him via KFAN.com. /watch, whatever. Yeah, whatever, however you get there. So I hope you'll be on your best behavior, Russo. And is it...
Zach, get this camera out of my face here.
Ooh. Shoes on the other foot now, ain't it, Russo?
Isn't
that funny?
What is the deal between Fallness and Zach with all these cameras? I go in the press box, I get text from Zach, from Fallness, like, stop bothering this, stop stretching, they have cameras.
Still.
They have cameras everywhere now. You can't do anything. Nothing's in anonymity with these two.
Is it messy in there? Because I assumed with the cameras that Fallness would kind of clean it up a little bit.
No, it is clean, but also the location of the camera is just staring right down on the bald spot. Like, this is just unbelievable.
I don't want to hear about
it's not necessarily a flattering look. You're right. Yeah.
I mean,
hand me those game notes.
I got more than a bald spot, so I'm not gonna. I don't feel too sorry for you in that. In that sense.
Now nobody can see me.
When does it's a 5-game road trip eventually, right? When does that start?
That starts Sunday in Chicago. When did Zach learn how to do all this technologically advanced stuff, by the way?
Zach is not as dumb as he looks.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've said that many, many times. No, it's a compliment. It really is. In an odd sort of...
Zach's issue's never been the knowledge. It's been applying the knowledge and using the knowledge.
You think
showing the initiative to show what he knows.
Is there a motivation issue, you think? Is that what you're saying?
At times, he's got maybe not the highest motor all the time, but the knowledge and the talent and ability, is, for me at least, has never been in question.
No doubt. Question.
So thanks again, Halvey, for jumping in and doing this.
That's correct, 100%.
After we savaged you for 5 straight minutes.
All right.
Yeah, Sunday's the 5-game. So they got 2 games before that.
Yep. And so we get who do we get back tonight? It's Kaprizov and Spurge, right?
Yep. And we'll see if Brodin and Johansson are around the corner. I don't think they've begun skating yet. They definitely didn't skate before practice today. I'm not sure if they skated after I had left the rink. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a tough sledding here without Kaprizov and Spurgeon. One for 12 games, the other for 9, and they were doing a really quality job, but eventually it just strains you, and I think that's what we've seen lately. Yeah. But they went into Colorado the other night, had a huge effort, and come back here feeling good about themselves, and now it's imperative that they start playing better at home, and no excuses anymore, and it's just nice to have, and you could feel the lift in the locker room with Kaprizov and Spurgeon back today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, obviously they were very cautious with Kaprizov, which probably made some sense. I think also for people like Louis, it made them nervous, a little bit, like you just felt like it was going on and on and on and on and on. But as you say, what Louis and I were talking about on Tuesday was that you feel like the rest of the way, probably more than anything else, just has to be about integrating all these key pieces that have been out for, in many cases, extended periods, and reintegrating them into what you're doing and just playing well. That the actual place in the standings might not be as important because you're going to make the postseason. It's just, let's get them all back relatively healthy, and let's give ourselves a good feeling about this group, remembering what they can do together.
Yeah, because remember, the first month and a half of the season, even beyond, I mean, they were the best defensive team in the NHL at 5-on-5, and that was the reason why they were winning games, even with Kaprizov playing at MVP levels. And they have lost that. Their play in their own end hasn't been nearly as clean, understandably so, when you're playing games so long without guys like Brodin and Spurgeon and Middleton and Faber. And eventually it catches up to you. But they're exiting of their own zone, and it has really struggled, and that's why they have struggled offensively. So that's my biggest thing is can they especially in a time now where they're not going to practice a ton. Although actually they'll have a pretty good practice after the 3 and 4 here, but then they go on the rest of the 4-game trip after they come back. But can they rediscover that game, that structure that made them so precision-like, really, the first 2 months of the season when they were the top team in the NHL by mid-December? And so things have changed dramatically, obviously, but they've figured out ways to still win games without some key players. Guys have stepped up marketably. They've seen some really quality play at different times by different players that we didn't expect playing big roles. They get really good efforts the last couple games from guys like Liam Ogren and David Jiricek, and now we'll see with Kaprizov and Spurgeon back, and eventually Brodin hopefully back soon, what this team could look like if they can finally stay healthy.
So you mentioned Jiricek, and you've made it fairly clear. You've written about this, and I think spoken about it, that maybe for the casual hockey fans, they're going, wait a minute, why? What did he do? Why are they down on him? Why did they punish him? That it really has nothing to do with punishment, right? It has to do with moving the pieces around with the salary cap restrictions that this team has, so that really they had no choice but to send him down.
Correct. I mean, if in a 2 weeks, if they're completely healthy and Brodin comes back into the lineup, like Travis Dermott's probably going on waivers. But right now, they could not operate under the cap with Dermott just on waivers and getting rid of him. They would have also had to send Devin Shore down. Now, Shore's the extra forward, but when they go on this 5-game trip, they need an extra forward for that trip. So financially, they were going to be $820 above the cap with Kaprizov off LTIR. And David Jiricek makes more than that. So that's the big reason why he was sent down. The other significant factor here that's on par with that is that with the right shot defenseman in the lineup, Faber, Spurgeon, Bogosian, he wasn't going to play. So you're not just going to keep him up as your 7th D right now. So they send him down, they get below the cap, and then eventually if they have an injury on their right side, they'll bring him back up here. But they weren't going to suddenly put Bogosian on his left side or put Jiricek miscast on his left side at 21 years old. He had a good game the other night in Colorado. There's still a lot to learn from the red line up. He looks like he's really got a lot of talent. Red line back, there's still a lot to learn on recognizing pressure. Neutral zone forechecks were an issue. Him trying to break that. Then coming out on breakouts and recognizing that there were some issues and just when to go and when to pass and things like that. So, they don't need him right now up here to make those mistakes. They need him down in the minors to learn how to correct those. But talking to John Hines, he's jacked about what this guy could bring in the future. They see the talent there and why the Wild gave up so much to get him. And now it's just a matter of getting him to have a really good second half, whether that's here or in Iowa. And then, hopefully Bill Guerin gives him the Marco Rossi quote unquote suggestion and says to him, it would behoove you to spend the offseason here in Minnesota and work with Matt Harder, their strength coach, work with Andy Ness, their skating coach, and then come back a really better player come training camp next year.
By the way, you mentioned the injuries, and it's been a big story for this team yet again this season. There's no vulnerability for the doctors, the training staff, because in other sports sometimes, whether it's fair or not, they end up getting blamed for why there's a bunch of injuries. So they're safe. This is all viewed as just happenstance and circumstance. It isn't anything we're doing. We can't blame it on anybody.
Yeah, I'm definitely not equipped to be able to answer that question. Obviously, like everything, when a season ends, management goes through and evaluates everything, and that's from the players on the ice to the coaching staff to the management, the job that they did to the medical and things like that. The only thing I'll say is that, some of these injuries are, it wasn't the medical staff that slew-footed Jared Spurgeon or, got Jonas Brodin in that shooting lane to block that shot or, put Jake Middleton's hand in the way of Evan Bouchard's shot. This is stuff that just happens. And, it has been 2 years in a row, but they're very different injuries. A lot of them are stuff that just happen playing the games. And so, like everything will be evaluated. But to me, this is not a medical issue or a training issue when guys are breaking bones or have sustaining injuries like that.
A testicle injury is a testicle injury.
Exactly.
A testicle injury is really
I was trying to avoid that one. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got, I believe, Gustafsson back in goal.
Yeah.
He's been obviously great for most of the season. Not so much lately. There's ebb and flow, very few even great goaltenders are going to go through stretches where they're going to give up some goals. Are we worried about him at all? Do we think this is just sort of a minor blip on the radar? And is that part of the reason we think he's playing tonight? That, hey, we got to get him going. He's our number one goaltender.
I definitely think that's the big reason, and not coming back with Fleury. Am I concerned to ask me in a week or two if their blue line is this healthy, minus Brodin, and he's still struggling stopping pucks? Then it's a concern. I think right now the easiest reason to give on why he's struggling is that when you're playing in front of makeshift blue lines, when suddenly John Merrill's your first pair. Playing on his offside, and Declan Chisholm's in this spot, and Bogosian's in this spot, and Merle, it just there. So much of this game is trust within each other between the blue liners and the goalie and the blue liners. And when things all of a sudden change, and you don't know who's blocking shots and where things are coming from, I think you overcorrect it and then make some mistakes. And so he clearly hasn't been as sharp and as clean in his game. There have been games even where he's been shellacked here lately where I thought he was very good, and then there were just some goals that in the game that he gave up that were poorly. And then there were some games where clearly he struggled dramatically. And so, but I do think that is the big reason why they're trying to get him in. I really thought that there was a chance they'd come back with Fleury tonight, especially because really the stretch where Gus's game started to take a turn for the worse. There were times this year where against Utah he hasn't played well, and so I thought maybe we'd see Flower back, and then you come back with Gus against Calgary, and then Flower in Chicago. But my guess is, especially depending on what happens tonight, is they probably go Gus, and then Flower. But I'm not really worried about him right now. But again, things can change quickly here. What's really interesting too is he is the Team Sweden goalie now for the Four Nations. Before, we thought there'd be a competition between him, Markstrom, and Ullmark. Well, now Markstrom sustained a major injury, and Ullmark's still out of Ottawa's lineup, and suddenly it looks very much like Gus is going to be the number one goalie for Sweden when the Four Nations start in Montreal on February 12th.
I heard you talking about this with the project with Paul Allen earlier today. The team's record against, I think, really good teams in the West, right? And it's not particularly distinguished. Now, I guess you could analyze that a lot of different ways. I assume there's other teams with good records, maybe who don't have great records against good teams. I don't know. You tell me. And there's the added asterisk that it's factual that they've had a bunch of people out, and the bunch of people are main players, right? Not just players, but main guys. So is there a caution flag up where you go, that's a little concerning? Or do you say, I can't in good conscience hammer him for that, what looks to be a weakness, because ultimately you're going to have to beat good teams because of when they played them. How do you view that whole deal?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all of the above. There's obviously a huge concern that they can't beat the top teams in the Western Conference. I mean, they have not played well against Edmonton, Dallas, Winnipeg, and teams like that. But they did beat Dallas last time they played them. They beat Colorado in a really impressive game the other day. Edmonton, I do feel is an aberration. They were without Kaprizov, and like when we were in Edmonton in November, I remember talking to Stan Bowman, and he's like, "That's the best team we've seen so far." And then things have changed the last two times they faced the Oilers. But if you look at the lineup that the Wild fielded against the Oilers, I mean, the other night when they got shellacked, that would be like you have Kaprizov out, Faber, Spurgeon, and Brodin. That's like taking Ekholm, Bouchard, Darnell Nurse, and McDavid out of their lineup. Any team would struggle in those situations. But the converse side of that is that they're and to be fair, it does seem like every time the Wild play one of these top teams, whether it's Dallas, Winnipeg, or Colorado in the last couple of years, they were without a laundry list of players. But these are the teams that you are going to face in today's NHL in the playoffs, and the way that the playoff format is situated. So it doesn't give you a lot of confidence when you're going to match up against Dallas, Colorado, or Winnipeg most likely in the first round, unless the Wild wound up either in a wild card spot and go cross divisions, or actually win the division and cross divisions. You're going to face those teams, and so you got to beat them at some point. Now, it's a concern. It's been their issue the last 2 years. The big games against big teams, they just wind up not winning them. And so I am absolutely concerned about it. I do think that with their healthy lineup, they match up much better against these teams than they did last year. But again, you got to beat them. What's shocking, and I know it's sort of a different style in the East, is the Wild have the best record in the NHL from a Western Conference standpoint against the Eastern Conference, and they always beat the top teams in the East, it seems. So why is this a Western Conference thing, or do they just not match up against these, these type of tight checking teams? That's something that they're going to have to figure out.
We're chatting with Russo Radio. The Wild back in action tonight on the Fan against the Utah Hockey Club. Is that what it's called?
Yep, Utah
Hockey Club. Exactly right.
And they're having trouble. By reports, they're trying to become the Utah Yeti. And they're having trademark issues right now. That I guess the trademarks they think that they'd be easily confused and all this stuff. So right now that seems to be the big issue.
Ooh, that's controversial. Yep. I had no idea. Who's Billy Guerin sniffing around, and how close are we to the trade deadline?
We're March 7th.
It's a ways off.
Is a ways off. Right now, one reason a lot of people, the only other option besides sending Jiricek down right now also is putting Brodin on LTIR if he's going to miss up until past February 1st, which right now it looks like he will. But they want to stay out of LTIR so they can continue or start to accrue cap space again so they can go out and make a trade deadline move. They had all these grand plans at the beginning of the season to try to accrue space and make significant, at least one move for maybe a top 6 forward at the trade deadline. And obviously being an LTIR the last 5 weeks, that's not free money. So when Middleton, Lauko, and Kaprizov all went on LTIR, everything sort of hit a sort of halted, and they haven't been able to accrue space. So now that they're out of LTIR, the hope is to gain some cushion here going into the deadline, and then maybe you can be a little creative. But they would love to get another scoring forward, I think, for this team. You
have in your letters, you answer the question about the ongoing interest in Brock Nelson, and you lay out, there's 2 ways to do this, that you think they're going to be very much interested in signing him as a free agent this offseason. But the danger, I guess the attraction to maybe considering a trade, if you could pull one off at the deadline this year, is the obvious, that then you're not competing against anybody else in the offseason. You got control of the situation, and then you can extend them. Play that out in your mind in terms of, what the calculus is there and how you think Billy Guerin might be thinking in that regard.
I mean, it's really interesting. Like, I'm always sort of against trading for somebody that you want to acquire, that you think you're 100% going to sign as a free agent in the offseason, because to me it's like, all right, unless that guy is going to make you a true cup contender, why not wait and not give up assets now? So, like, if Lou Lamoriello decides to trade a player of Brock Nelson's pedigree, he is not just going to give him away. It's going to have to include some sort of prospect, a first-round pick, if it is a first, the Wild are going to have to now go future first-round pick because they gave up their first in the David Jiricek deal. So now that would be 2 years in a row. Maybe you don't have a first-round pick. And to me, it would be a real shame to give up, say you traded Liam Ogren for Brock Nelson, but you were going to sign Brock Nelson on July 1 most likely anyway. Like, to me, it's just not, that to me is just not worth it, but that's just my own opinion. What Brock Nelson brings, even though he's had at least production-wise a down year on a really struggling Islanders team, is versatility. He could play left wing, he could play center. He could play right wing. He could play, he's a great penalty killer, adds to the power play. He wins big draws. You play him up and down the lineup. There's just a lot to like about him, even at 33 years old. And clearly, Bill Guerin, Chris Kelleher, and the Wild staff have, immense respect for him because Billy and Kelleher put him on the Four Nations roster coming up for USA Hockey. So I think that he was the ideal guy. But now with their lack of cap space, I don't know if they're going to be able to in a month to accrue the amount of money that you need to go get him. So you would have to get really creative. One, in your package because you've already given up your first, and two, getting the Islanders to maybe eat some of that contract, getting a third party in there to eat some of it. It takes now a lot of work to get something like that done. Where we were before, I think it was going to be pretty straight and forward, try to make the move. The other thing with Lou is there's just no guarantee, even if the Islanders are 16th in the Eastern Conference. There's no guarantee he's even going to trade him. Lou's got a history of no matter where they are in the standings, whatever one of his teams are, whether it's the Islanders, Maple Leafs, or the Devils, of just letting guys go for nothing at the deadline on free agency and not even trying to recoup something at the deadline. It's almost like his old school way. kind of stubbornness, and so there's not even a guarantee that Nelson gets moved. And again, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be lining up for him at the deadline if he does get moved, and those teams are going to have a lot easier way of getting it done just because they're going to have more cap space and probably better assets if you're not wanting to give up a future first-round pick.
How conscious are Guerin, Heinze, the players, of this odd quirk that the team's got an impeccable road record, but a fairly mediocre 500-ish, similar actually to the Timberwolves home record, and is it just a weird circumstance, or how do we explain it?
Yeah, I think that Minnesota fans have become very much like Philadelphia fans. They just make it extremely hard on their players and just go in there every day and just rip on them and throw batteries at them and boost Santa and things like that. So it's just hard to play in this building. I don't know what it is. I really don't. I don't know if it's because they moved their morning skates over at Tria and they're just not used to this building. They're barely here and all that stuff. It's just so bizarre that everything has changed because, as I've often said in my 20 years covering this team, even in their most mediocre seasons, they're dominant on home ice, and they've been anything but this year. They're 11-10-1. Even in those 11 wins, they haven't been impressive wins. As I said to PA this morning, there have been some really exciting wins and overtime games and things like that. But, those games even then were just not very good. So I don't know what it is. But they better figure it out because the month of March, they have a ton of home games. And so they've better figure out what's going on here. My guess is they do figure it out. But, when you're halfway through the season, it can't be an aberration at this point. And so it's just something that has to change, importantly. Luckily for them, they've been, tremendous on the road. And, their most impressive victories of the season on the road, which I feel bad for the fans because they pay a fortune to come into this building to be entertained, see victories and things like that. And not only too often are the fans going out onto West 7th after a loss, but sometimes they're biggest clunkers that you've ever seen. I mean, they've had 6-1 losses and 5-1 losses. I mean, they're just getting smoked at home. Now, a lot of it is, they're missing a lot of guys and things like that, but it's really unexplainable.
Are there any sort of caution flags on Kaprizov tonight? Is he full? Is it now we're going to play him half the time we usually do, or what do you know on that?
I don't think that he'd allow that if that was even the case. No, he's going to be top line, top power play, all that stuff. I think he's going to get his normal minutes. I think he's going to try to make up for lost time, and that's sometimes where Kirill gets himself into trouble when he tries to do too much individually. But my expectation is that we're going to see a really great game from him. I know that this has been a really frustrating month for him. I don't think he ever expected to miss this much time. Clearly, it wasn't getting better. So I think that we'll see a really quality game from him tonight.
Jim is responding to a point you made earlier. Why did they move their morning skate?
They moved their morning skates because at Tria, they have all their facilities there. In terms of guys can get in all their treatments, their hot tubs or cold tubs. They have the team chef there. They can have their pregame meal there. And then the other thing is that when you're the home team at a morning skate, the visiting team has to get on at 11:30 for a 7 o'clock game, which means you have to be off the ice at 11:15 for them to resurface and all that stuff. So they just felt rushed, where at Tria, they can have guys work extra with the coaches, guys that aren't playing, and things like that. So that was the biggest reason is just sort of get out of there and have no time constraints because the home team always does when the road team has a morning skate.
Does the team chef plan meals for you?
No, he does not.
Oh.
I would love to go back there, though. I hear it's incredible.
Gotta be.
Yeah, I know. I think that I eat plenty.
No need. Well, yeah, but the team chef might help you with that. Like,
no,
okay,
I know.
Better stuff for you, smaller portions.
Smaller portions.
Yeah.
Then I can go into the gym, work out with their strength coach, and just act like I own the place.
I think it's only fair.
I agree
At some point, you'd be grandfathered. Next time I have Guerin on, I'll try to suggest that to him, see how he responds.
Yeah, this has been probably my best year of maintaining my weight during the season, but it's not perfect.
Yeah,
and
that's okay.
I could use a little help from. It might be a bit of a conflict of interest.
It's frustrating. A little bit. So. That's okay.
Can we spin the camera around for those watching?
Fallness
to
is
see
over
the
there.
Fallness studio.
Can I? Here we go. Zach's doing it.
Point at Helby.
No.
Look
Point.
at the
Keep on
studio.
turning. Go to.
I'll move with it.
No. Go
Let's
show
see what
Fallness
year
right
the
now.
sweatshirt Fallness is wearing is from.
Is it a game worn from like 1988?
He
or
likes to
something?
go to the 2003 All-Star game, which is a little
okay.
dated. Look at Fallness right there.
Oh my God!
Does he look a bit dorky?
Dorky.
You can't see this? Go to
No,
Cafe
I'm
on
on-
Twitter.
yeah,
You
let
can
me-
see it.
I should do
Look
that.
at it real
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
You're fine. I'll send you a selfie. You don't have to look at me on the video.
Was that your cheap shot, Fallness, earlier today about the bong
Yes.
equipment?
You like how I picked that out
You're
right away?
unbelievable.
Hashtag greedy. I just wonder if you went through the box of THC items with Baldelli like you went through the
Well, here's
candles
the rub.
with me.
Here's the rub on that.
I'll take 12. You get one.
I wouldn't even know. I don't know any of that stuff. I wouldn't recognize the good from the mediocre. You know what I'm saying? Well, no, this is stuff I want more of. Candles, I know that business.
Yep.
Ganja, I just don't. You know, people don't believe me, but I just don't.
So you were less greedy with that stuff, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You're very
so far,
greedy with the candles.
I know, and you're still not over it, are you? You ended up getting more candles than I did. They sent you a whole shipment.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
because the box was to me,
Yeah,
and you didn't have get a chance to pilfer it first.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's
I can't
all
deny that.
remember the fact that this only became a subject because I brought it up, and
That's
then I
That's
should
true.
get some of these
How many candles did you get, Russo?
None, zero.
yeah.
Justin, and as you saw in our group text the other day, I requested a certain scent of candle for
That's right.
Kevin and the great goodness of his heart to pick up at Target, and he didn't do that.
He hasn't done it yet, huh?
Is
Yeah,
there
no.
a hockey sweat candle scent? Does that exist? You know, on the
yeah,
pads, the stink of the pads, that scent?
That is an odor and an aroma.
That's just usually what
Unmistakable.
that's usually what Kevin's booth smells like
Yeah.
anyway.
That's not
without
true.
the
It's
candles.
very clean down here. I get a bad rap.
No,
Fallness,
you
what
say.
first round playoff series is that picture behind you from? It looks like a packed house. It
Oh,
looks
that's
exciting.
a cheap shot right there.
Which
I didn't
first
put
round
that up,
series is that from?
But that's not funny either.
Is that from 14, 15, 16, 17?
no, it actually says
18, 19?
2003. Yeah.
It does say 2003.
Now you sound like Johnny Athletic. He'd love that. cheap
03
shot.
was a great year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It sure was. It was a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun.
That was a long, long time ago, wasn't it? But
Hey, by the
I remember it like yesterday. Yeah.
speaking of taking boxes that aren't just meant for them, tell Johnny Athletic next time you talk to him that the person that sent a bunch of athletic hats to the fan for both he and I need some of those.
Oh, that's true.
We have a bunch of hoarders
Well, first
around
of all,
here.
yeah, and you guys have never gotten. Guardsy and I are both double or triple paying for subscriptions because
Yeah.
we can't get out of the subscription hell you guys created, and we've never gotten a ball cap for God's sake.
I'll get you on.
Come
I'll get
on,
you
man.
on. Brandon Bills, they're the ones that send this over.
Oh,
The guys that
all right.
do the.
They look nice.
Yeah, they look awesome.
Okay.
Make them specifically just for Krasinski and I, so we
That'd be nice.
proudly wear them.
Yeah, and give us a shout. You know, everyone think about
Absolutely.
us every once in a while.
Yeah, definitely. Tell Johnny to bring a couple in for you guys.
It's a deal. Have fun tonight. Thanks as always, and Fallness.
Thanks, Kevin.
Just
All
shut
right.
up.
Goodbye,
Just
guys.
shut
Thanks,
up.
Albie.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We are at the go. We had an interesting discussion still about the Minnesota Vikings with Sean Salisbury because we had not talked with him since they were eliminated from the postseason. I want to review a couple of the nuggets from him because I do think that's part of the ongoing discussion that needs to be examined regarding your Vikings future. Forget the past. It's also directly related to the future as well. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Barreiro on The Fan.
KFAN Total Traffic.
This report is sponsored by Bet Online.
Traffic's heavy on 394 eastbound between Xenia Park Place and 94 westbound's a little slow out of downtown, but just to Dunwoody, and congestion again.
Internet that's everything you imagine, and then some. Quantum Fiber, your world unleashed. Sign up today and get internet with a price for life. Keep your internet service monthly rate for as long as you keep your plan. Internet service monthly rate subject to continued plan availability.